You see the Great Pyramids of Giza. You see majesty. You see an architectural wonder that has baffled humanity for millennia. You see a monument to the gods, a testament to a civilization that touched the heavens. You are wrong. What you are looking at are tombstones. Not just for the pharaohs who lie within, but for the tens of thousands of souls who were crushed into their very foundations. The secrets buried under that golden sand are so gruesome, so steeped in calculated cruelty, they make the 10 plagues of Egypt look like a mild inconvenience. Forget the romantic myth of well-paid, respected workers happily building a monument to their god-king. That is a comforting, modern lie we tell ourselves to sanitize the past. The truth is a nightmare of systematic brutality, of ritual human sacrifice, and of horrifying curses designed not just to kill an intruder, but to utterly annihilate their soul for all eternity. You are about to learn what it truly cost to build a stairway to the stars. This is the side of ancient Egypt the museums and documentaries are afraid to show you. Let's begin with the stones themselves. The very building blocks of this wonder. Each one weighs over 2.5 tons. That is the average weight of a modern sport utility vehicle. And in the Great Pyramid alone, there are over 2 million of them. So how did they move them? Not with cranes, not with advanced technology, and certainly not with magic. They moved them with human flesh, human blood, and an endless supply of human suffering. Picture this in your mind. You are a laborer, perhaps a farmer forced into service, or more likely, a prisoner of war captured in a foreign land. Your back is a canvas of blisters and scars, scorched raw by the merciless Egyptian sun. You are one of 100 men, straining with every muscle, hauling a single block of limestone up a massive, sandy ramp. The air is thick with dust and the metallic scent of sweat and blood. The man in front of you slips, his scream choked off as the rope tears through his hands. There is no stopping. There are no safety measures. The supervisors, armed with whips, scream at you to keep pulling. If you fall, you are not rescued. You are an obstacle. You are left to be crushed under the immense weight of the stone. Your body is simply swept aside with the rest of the day's debris, another nameless casualty in the glorious construction of a tomb. There are no sick days. There is no compassion. There is only the ceaseless, grinding work until your body breaks. And we know this because the skeletons themselves scream a story of horror. Archaeologists have uncovered the village and cemeteries of the workers, and the bones tell a story that turns the stomach. They found vertebrae fused together or crushed completely under immense, constant pressure. They found skulls caved in from falling stones and equipment. They found countless limbs shattered, twisted, and left to heal crooked and useless, because a worker's health was less valuable than the time it would take to treat him. The average life expectancy for a man starting work on the pyramids was terrifyingly short. They were disposable parts in a divine machine, worked to death and then unceremoniously buried in nameless pits in the sand. This is the truth the history classes conveniently leave out. The pyramids are cemented together with the bones, the sweat, and the blood of an entire generation of broken people. But the horror does not end with the workers. For some, the most terrifying ordeal began only after the pharaoh's final breath. You might think being the pharaoh's favorite servant, his most trusted guard, or his beloved concubine was a position of honor. In the early days of pyramid building, it was a guaranteed death sentence. This ritual was called a retainer sacrifice, and it is as terrifying as it sounds. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was a perilous one, and he could not make it alone. He needed his entourage. He needed his servants to attend to his needs, his guards to protect him, and his companions for eternity. So when the king died, his court died with him. Excavations of the first royal tombs at Abydos have revealed a truly chilling scene, a frozen tableau of ritual murder. Archaeologists found dozens of skeletons arranged in perfect order in the chambers surrounding the king's tomb. Guards still holding their spears, servants placed beside jars of food and wine, women positioned as if still entertaining their master. They were all there, sealed into the tomb to serve for eternity. But here is where it becomes a true psychological horror. They were not always violently killed beforehand. Forensic evidence from some of these retainer burials suggests that many of the victims were poisoned with a paralyzing agent. They were fully conscious, their minds screaming, but their bodies were frozen. They were unable to move, unable to speak, as they were carried into the pitch-black darkness of the tomb and laid in their final positions. They could do nothing but listen. Listen to the final prayers being chanted. Listen to the sound of thousands of tons of stone and sand being piled above them, sealing them in. They died slowly, suffocating in the silent, absolute darkness, forever bound to a dead master. It was not an honor. It was the ultimate act of control, a king's power so immense that it reached beyond the veil of death to claim the lives of all those around him. With such a horrific cost to build and sanctify these tombs, the pharaohs were obsessed with protecting them for eternity. This obsession gave birth to the legend of the pharaoh's curse. And you should know this was not just a myth for the movies. The ancient Egyptians took this with deadly seriousness. The warnings carved into the entrances of the tombs were not idle threats. They were specific, gruesome recipes for a fate worse than death. Forget a quick and simple end. The curses promised so much more. One famous inscription from a tomb official's grave warns that any who desecrate his tomb will be judged by the great god. It says a crocodile will be against him in the water, a snake against him on land. It promises that he will have no heir, that his very name and lineage will be extinguished from the earth. The ultimate terror for an Egyptian was not just to die, but to be forgotten, to be erased from existence. Another curse promised that the intruder's soul, their vital life force known as the Ka, would be prevented from joining the afterlife. Instead, it would be devoured by a terrifying coalition of beasts, a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. This was not just about dying, it was about having your eternal soul torn to pieces. And the architects of the pyramids engineered these curses into the very fabric of the buildings. They were masters of creating traps designed to inflict maximum terror. They built hidden trapdoors that opened into deep, dark pits, sometimes lined with sharpened stakes. They constructed elaborate mazes of false passages and dead ends, designed to confuse and trap tomb robbers until they lost their minds and starved to death in the suffocating darkness. Massive granite portcullis stones, weighing several tons, were designed to drop from the ceiling, sealing passages forever or crushing anyone unfortunate enough to be beneath them. But here is a detail that will haunt you. Some historians and scientists believe the Egyptians practiced an early form of biological warfare. Tombs were sealed for thousands of years. Inside, airborne bacteria and toxic molds could fester and grow on the funerary offerings. The Egyptians may have even intentionally placed spoiled or poisonous materials in the tomb, knowing that the first person to break the seal and take a breath of that ancient, stagnant air would inhale a cloud of deadly pathogens. Their death, days or weeks later from a mysterious, wasting illness, would seem like the divine hand of the gods striking them down. The curse made real. And yet, despite all these terrifying protections, the tombs were almost all eventually broken into. The lure of gold was simply too strong. This created another dark chapter in the pyramid story, the era of the tomb robber. These were not opportunistic thieves. They were organized gangs, often with inside information from the very artisans who built the tombs. They operated with ruthless efficiency, tunneling through solid rock, disabling traps and desecrating the sacred chambers. They would strip the mummy of its golden amulets, pry the jewels from the coffin, and steal everything of value, leaving behind a scene of chaos and sacrilege. For them, the mummy of the god king was just an obstacle between them and unimaginable wealth. The punishment for being caught was just as brutal as the curses themselves. Justice was swift and merciless. Tomb robbers were often impaled alive on sharpened stakes, their bodies left to bake in the sun as a gruesome warning to others. Other punishments included being burned alive or having their nose and ears cut off before being sent to a life of forced labor in the mines. It was a vicious cycle of greed and brutality, playing out for centuries in the shadows of the great monuments. So the next time you see a beautiful photograph of the pyramids, that perfect golden triangle set against a brilliant blue sky, I want you to look closer. Look beyond the majesty. See the truth. You are not looking at a simple monument. You are looking at a mountain of human suffering, built on the broken backs of countless men. You are looking at a tomb sealed with the silent screams of servants buried alive. You are looking at a fortress of the dead, protected by a dark and ancient malice that was engineered to last longer than stone itself. The greatest wonder of the ancient world is, and always has been, its most terrifying and magnificent mass grave.